Coming up today, President Park Geun-hye is set for talks with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit in Laos. North Korea's continual provocations are likely to dominate the discussions. The UN Security Council puts North Korea on notice. It condemns the regime for its recent missile tests and threatens further action if Pyongyang stays on its current path. First, have those face masks at the ready. Korea is under a layer of ultra-fine dust that's expected to linger for the rest of the day. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Wednesday, the 7th of September. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm Mark Broom. Let's start with President Park Geun-hye, who is in Laos for this year's ASEAN summit. The South Korean leader will attend a series of multilateral summits on this Wednesday, then sit down with the Japanese Prime Minister for talks that'll focus on North Korea's nuclear program. Our Song Ji-son, who is traveling with the president, files this report from Laos.
On the final day of 2015, ASEAN member nations officially launched the ASEAN community in a bid to strengthen synergy and collaboration in the region. At this year's meeting, South Korea will seek to revive cooperation with the massive economic bloc, a region with a combined GDP of $2.5 trillion and home to 630 million people.
At the ASEAN summit, Seoul will seek to reinforce cooperation with the ASEAN community. And at the ASEAN +3 summit, the 10 ASEAN member countries, plus the leaders of South Korea, Japan and China, will review their achievements over the past year and discuss future cooperation.
President Park will also use the chance to win greater support from the international community to press North Korea over its nuclear and missile provocations. After a summit on Tuesday with U.S. President Barack Obama, where the two leaders vowed to counter North Korean threats with all possible measures, President Park will now discuss the North Korean issue with her Japanese counterpart, Shinzo Abe.
At their second bilateral summit this year, President Park and Prime Minister Abe will center their focus on the North Korean nuclear issue and ways to develop bilateral relations and cooperation.
Following talks with Abe, President Park will have completed a series of bilateral talks with Russia, China, the U.S. and Japan. The leaders will all gather at the East Asia Summit on Thursday to further discuss regional security. Song Ji-son, Arirang News, VNTN.
The UN Security Council has spoken with one voice, strongly condemning North Korea's recent ballistic missile launches. The Council says the launches were a grave violation of the nation's international obligations and vowed further action if the threats continue. Kwon Soo-ah has the details.
The members of the Security Council strongly condemned the ballistic missile launches conducted by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea on 5 September 2016.
4 hours was all it took for the UN Security Council to unanimously adopt a press statement against North Korea's recent violations, namely its launch on Monday of 3 medium-range ballistic missiles off its east coast. Issued just 11 days after a statement on Pyongyang's recent submarine-launched ballistic missile test, the new statement says all members are deeply concerned about the launches that were carried out in flagrant disregard of its demands. That China, North Korea's only major ally, did not hesitate giving its approval is said to be related to the timing of the provocation.
This launch, which I would note took place while China was hosting the G20 summit, once again shows the DPRK's blatant disregard for its international obligations.
The deputy chief of South Korea's mission to the UN said the international community should send a clear and unequivocal message to North Korea.
If they continue to provoke and violate the international commitment and sanctions, they will face much stronger and insurmountable and significant countermeasures.
The remarks suggest that if North Korea stays on its current path, it could face even tougher punitive measures than the strongest UN sanctions to date, which were imposed on the regime after its fourth nuclear test in January. South Korea has welcomed the statement, saying it shows the UN Security Council's united will to bring about change in North Korea. According to the Foreign Ministry, Seoul will continue its diplomatic efforts for the thorough implementation of UN sanctions on the regime. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Now, as a follow-up to Soa's report, North Korea's Nodong missile launches earlier this week during the G20 summit in China have widely been viewed as a ploy for attention from the international community. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
In a photo released on Tuesday, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and his military commanders are looking at an operations map showing the missile's flight path. The missiles flew around 1,000 kilometers before falling into waters inside Japan's Air Defense Identification Zone. The Rodong missile, which has a range of up to 1,500 kilometers, could target key U.S. bases located in Japan. U.S. forces stationed in Japan would be the first to be deployed in case of a crisis on the Korean peninsula, before the main reinforcements from the U.S. and the international community arrive. Not only could North Korea arm a Rodong missile with a nuclear warhead, it could fire it from a mobile launcher, making it difficult to track beforehand. Experts say North Korea will continue to enhance its missiles and nuclear weapons as the only negotiating tool, prolonging the regime's survival. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
In domestic politics, the interim leader of the minor opposition People's Party gave a policy speech to the National Assembly this morning, focusing on ways to revitalise the economy and improve relations with North Korea. Park Ji-won stressed the need for shared growth between large and small companies. He urged the government to implement stricter regulations on conglomerates to help small and medium-sized enterprises thrive in the market. On North Korea, the minor opposition leader called for constructive dialogue with Pyongyang and questioned the effectiveness of the US anti-missile system THAAD that's set to be deployed on South Korean soil. He also emphasized the need to establish an independent body to investigate corruption scandals involving senior public officials. Park's parliamentary address followed those made by the leaders of the ruling Saenuri Party and the main opposition Minju Party on Monday and Tuesday. A court in the United States has granted temporary bankruptcy protection for Korea's Hanjin Shipping. The order, issued by the U.S. Bankruptcy Court in Newark, New Jersey, comes 4 days after the shipping giant filed the application. The move will prevent U.S. creditors from taking legal action against Hanjin ships and other assets while the company undergoes restructuring in Korea. Hanjin's representatives will have to return to court on Friday to discuss unresolved logistical issues with company stakeholders. Hundreds of retailers are still awaiting shipments for the upcoming holiday season. On Tuesday, Hanjin Group announced plans to inject over $91 million into its cash-strapped shipping arm. Korea's Trade Ministry also launched a special task force to resolve possible knock-on effects on the broader economy. With just over 60 days left on the campaign trail, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump start the final stretch to the November 8th election, basically even in the latest polls. This is great news for a resurgent Trump, who had been lagging far behind Clinton just a few weeks ago. Park Jung-hong has the details.
With the U.S. presidential election just 2 months away now, the race for the White House is too close to call. A joint poll by CNN and polling agency ORC shows Hillary Clinton leading Donald Trump by a mere 3 percentage points, with 44% among registered voters. But among likely voters, Trump has the upper hand, with 45% to Clinton's 43%. As the margin of error is plus or minus 3.5%, the figures put the two rivals in a statistical dead heat. Analysts say it's a major comeback for the Republican presidential nominee. What's more, among independents not affiliated with either party, the poll found Trump is ahead by a whopping 20 percentage points, with 49% support, suggesting Clinton's post-convention surge has virtually evaporated. Against this backdrop, some pundits predict the November 8th election will depend on moderate supporters of Trump, namely how many of them actually show up to cast their ballots. Park Jong-hong, Arirang News.
Now, staying with international news, the World Health Organization is recommending safer sex for anyone who has traveled to regions affected by the Zika virus. And a new study suggests Zika can be transmitted through infected tears, possibly causing permanent blindness. Ian Shin explains.
The World Health Organization is recommending safe sex or even abstinence for at least 6 months for those who spend time in areas where Zika is actively circulating. The WHO's new guidelines published on Tuesday applies also to those not showing typical symptoms such as fever, rash, or joint pain. Although Zika is primarily transmitted through bites from infected mosquitoes, the organization says spreading the virus through sexual contact is evidently possible, and cases are more common than previously thought. Meanwhile, a new study also published on Tuesday suggests it may be possible to spread the virus through tears. According to researchers of Washington University School of Medicine, the virus can live in the eyes and could even cause permanent loss of vision. Zika is believed to cause brain defects in infants, the symptom for which it's most widely known. However, the WHO adds that scientists' understanding of Zika and its transmission is limited, and its guidance will be reviewed and recommendations will be updated as new evidence emerges. Ian Shin, Arirang News.
Now, another week, another smart device. This time it's LG Electronics unveiling its new premium smartphone as it bids to revive its struggling handset sector. The V20, announced in Seoul and San Francisco, is the first smartphone to run on Google's latest Android mobile operating system called Nougat and adopt Google's new search app In Apps. The V20 features dual-lens rear cameras and high-end auto functions. LG suffered disappointing sales with its G5 smartphone earlier this year, posting its 5th consecutive quarterly operating loss in the second quarter. In-store sales of the V20 are expected to begin later this month. Now, the summer heat waves are over here in Korea, and soon to come are the clear blue skies of autumn. But not just yet. High levels of fine dust particles are in the air this lunchtime, and many are getting out their face masks as a result. EG1 reports.
Temperatures drop to the dew point Tuesday night in Korea as cooler weather starts to settle in. But on the downside, parts of the nation are seeing high levels of potentially harmful fine dust in the air. Wednesday morning, Seoul and the surrounding Gyeonggi-do province saw fine dust levels over 80 micrograms per cubic meter, and the extremely unhealthy ultra-fine dust around 50 micrograms, twice the usual amount. On its 5-tier air quality rating system, the Environment Ministry said that the western port city of Incheon saw very bad levels of fine dust, while Seoul and Gyeonggi-do province see bad levels, the first time the capitals reached that level in 3 months. Fine dust can penetrate deeply into the lungs, causing various respiratory diseases, while ultra-fine particles can be absorbed directly into the bloodstream, possibly contributing to heart disease and strokes. More dust than usual has blown over from China, which has seen dry conditions prevailing. But over the course of Wednesday, the Environment Ministry expects levels of fine and ultra-fine dust in Korea to return to normal. Still, in the morning, experts advise people to wear dust masks and refrain from going out if possible. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
Well, those are the stories we've been following on this Wednesday afternoon here in Seoul. Just a reminder that for more of the latest news from Korea and around the world, you can find us online by going to arirang.com/news. If you have a smartphone, you can also download our smartphone application. All you have to do is search for Arirang TV in your Google Play or App Store. Our next newscast is coming up at 3 p.m. Korea time, with Business Daily coming up at 4 p.m. Have a great day. Goodbye.